Peace, family. It's your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. Peace to the gods and the earths out there. Peace to everybody. Free the land. Hotep. Assalamu alaikum. It's so good to see everybody here on Night School. I'm so excited to be here with everybody here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel. If you're new to Night School, welcome. This is a global classroom where we break down the biggest issues, the most controversial topics, the most urgent subjects going on in the world today. But we don't do controversial conversation for its own sake. We don't have a fly-by-night debate. We don't have superficial talking points. We don't have canned answers. Instead, we do something very different. We have deep dive conversations about the urgent matters going on in the world. So I want to shout out everybody who shows up every single night for Night School, and I want to welcome the people who are here for the first time. People like Adric Hapoy, shout out to you. Jazz LP, as always, present and accounted for. Rachel from Massachusetts, Jenny B, Lily Kismet. I'm just hitting up a few of the people who showed up early and or on time for the show. Also, shout out to the people who gifted memberships last night. We saw Brother Chad give out some gifts, some gift memberships. I think Mege gave out some certificates. I keep saying gift certificates, gift memberships. We love it. We appreciate it. We're grateful for everybody who not only shows up every night, but also generously donates to the channel by purchasing memberships or by purchasing memberships for other people. That is how we keep this channel going. But anyway, I don't want to get into all of that right now. Instead, I want to talk about all of the things going on in the world. This week has been incredibly difficult. It's been incredibly tense. Kamala Harris ran for president before, and we didn't see this kind of tension. But now that she's a front runner, now that she is the Democratic Party's presumptive nominee, there's a lot more drama and tension. And a lot of it centers around her foreign policy, also her immigration policy, domestic policy related to immigration. And all of these policies are prompting people on the left to say she's not a leftist. And there are Black people on the left who are saying that, but there are also Black people who are saying she's ours. There are also people who are being pragmatic voters and saying, look, we need the outcomes that we need, and stopping Trump is the best outcome possible. And so everybody be cool. And that's presenting lots of tensions and all that stuff we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about Donald Trump continuing to fall apart. We're going to continue to talk about a lot of the stuff that has been going on in this crazy, 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 crazy world. And I'm going to start with what I think is the most important, the most urgent story that we have had all, maybe in weeks. Not because the story itself is the most important thing, but for what the story means. Let me get right to it. As you know, we are days away from the Democratic National Convention, which will be in Chicago, Illinois. That is the home of lots of luminaries, from Harold Washington to Jesse Jackson to Barack and Michelle Obama. In the DNC convention in Chicago, you will see all the pomp and circumstance you've ever seen. Every 4 years, the Democrats and the Republicans show up and show out with all the pomp and circumstance in the world. They have the famous people, they have the galas, they have the parties. I've been to the DNC multiple times. I gotta say, it's a good time. But this one is going to be a little bit different. This one is going to be a lot different. Kamala Harris will be accepting the party's nomination to lead the Democratic ticket in November's presidential election. We've only seen one other time with a Black person at the top of the ticket. We've never seen a Black woman at the top of the ticket. I was there in 2008 when Obama accepted the nomination. We were in Denver, Colorado. I know what that was like. This is going to be something else. Of course, Governor Tim Walz is going to be there as well as her VP choice. And people are excited. Women are excited. Men are excited. Black people are excited. White people are excited. But nobody is more excited about this than Black people, and certainly Black women. Because again, Kamala Harris is the first woman, and well, not she's not the first woman. Hillary Clinton is the first woman to lead the top of a major party ticket. But Harris is the first woman of color to do so. You know Nikki Haley thought the spot was hers. She was punching the air. She thought she could beat Trump. She could not. And we're expecting this to be on 1,000. I mean, I'm talking about, you ain't seen star-studded like you're going to see in 2024 Democratic Convention in Chicago. I'm trying to tell you, when I was at the convention in 2008, and I've been to multiple ones, but the one in 2008, I'm talking about the parties. I didn't go to a lot of parties, but I'm just saying the fact the parties they had were so exclusive, you couldn't get in unless you were an A-list celebrity. I went to watch Barack Obama accept the party's nomination, and we were in the stadium in Denver, and I've never seen anything like it. I was in the cheap seats. I was all the way at the top of the stadium, and when I looked to my left, there was a celebrity. Look to my right, there was a celebrity. Will.i.am was sitting right in front of me. I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying we were all in the cheap seats. But the fact that, and I was working for a news network at the time. I was working actually at Fox News at the time. So I actually had a special pass. And the best I could get was the top of the stadium. But I'm saying celebrities, even the Black Eyed Peas were the hottest thing in the world. You might think they're corny, whatever. That's a whole other conversation for another time. Whatever you think about them, they were super famous. And they couldn't get near the floor. It was next level because everybody, every A-list celebrity, every actor, every actress, every singer, every head of state, every powerful politician wanted to be there to say they watched Barack Obama accept the party's nomination. And so when you have a moment like that, it's just up. And that's what we're going to see this time with Kamala Harris. We're going to see something that we've never seen before. But it's not just Black people that's going to be there. And it's not just people who celebrate Kamala Harris who are going to be there. There's also going to be, as there always is, a lot of protest. Now, every protest ain't the same. And the protest that has everybody upset right now on the internet is a protest promise. I'm not going to call it a threat. I don't think it's a threat, but a protest promise from a Chicago-based pro-Palestinian activist. This person shows up. I believe the video originates on TikTok. I'm old, so I don't see TikTok videos, so they get to Twitter and Instagram, but they made the video. It's a person whose voice is modulated, and their face is covered with what looks like a keffiyeh, Palestinian keffiyeh, and they make a fairly intense, I would argue politically clear analysis of the Democratic Party, but they do it in a way that caused some concern for people on the left. I'm going to just show you the video. I don't want to make any assumptions about how you'll interpret it. I want you to interpret it for yourself. Check this out.
The Democratic National Convention is coming to Chicago. It's where the Democratic Party's insiders and delegates come together to crown their next villain. This year, for the first time since 1968, the Democratic nominee will be chosen without a single American voting for them in the primaries, proving that your voice doesn't matter, only their agenda. This election season, Democrats are desperate to rally behind Killer Kamala, a supposedly left-wing candidate who's just as far right as Trump on policies such as immigration and crime. It looks like Kamala has chosen her partner in crime. She chose Tim Walz as her genocidal running mate. If you didn't know, Walz was a former command sergeant who supported the war in Afghanistan. As home to the largest Palestinian diaspora in the country, we want to give Killer Kamala, her partners in crime, and her future VP a warm welcome to our city. We do not care who's on the ballot come this November. We will not be voting for either genocidal party. As the people of Chicago, we condemn in the strongest words possible the genocidal Democratic Party, which has shown no reservations in materially supporting the Israeli genocide in Gaza. It has been over 300 days since the start of the genocide and over 76 years of colonization by the Zionist entity. We are not only calling for a ceasefire, but we are calling for an end to all U.S. aid to Israel, divestment of the $120 million in Israel bonds that Illinois holds, an end to Chicago's Cop City, and a dismissal of the proposed investment of $900 million for prison renewal in Illinois. We call on our elected officials to invest in our communities, to value jobs and education over genocide and incarceration. We, the people, demand Mayor Johnson and Governor Pritzker to cancel the DNC. We will no longer accept empty gestures by politicians who have been bought out by weapons manufacturers and pro-Israel lobbyists. If the Democratic Party loses in November, the genocidal policies will be blame alone. We stand united in our call for justice. We demand change and we will not be silenced. We charge genocide.
We charge genocide. Now, let's first get to the political analysis that the person offered. Um, he's right. Fundamentally, he's right. I don't agree with every single thing he said. You know, the whole idea of not of the voting and all that stuff, I think is a little more nuanced than that when you talk about Joe Biden stepping aside. But I do think that there should have been a Democratic primary. I think there should have been a convention, a broker, not a broker convention, but there should have been a convention vote. I think the American people should have had the opportunity to decide who they wanted to be their representative. I'm not sure who they would choose, but that's what democracy is all about. But more fundamentally, the question of who should or how should we approach what's happening in Gaza, the idea that the United States is underwritten and supported a genocide, the idea that the United States is complicit in the war crimes of Netanyahu and the Israeli government, all that's true. And the claim that, they want to withhold their votes and not allow, or at least withhold the votes from Democrats, and not allow the Democratic Party to be rewarded for their complicity with genocide. And I'm talking specifically about the Biden Harris administration. It's very important for them to say, hey, we're not going to reward you by letting you be president again. I get it. I think that that is a legitimate and principled position to take. It's not the position that I'm taking this year. As of now, I wouldn't probably no, I would not take that position. I intend to make a different choice, a strategic choice to support Kamala Harris or to vote for Kamala Harris to block Trump, because I think that as a practical matter, stops the bleeding more. As a practical matter, I think that that stops Donald Trump, which I think that has an impact on issues beyond just Palestine, which is something we need to talk about. But I respect anybody who says, "Hey, I'm voting third party. Hey, I'm voting. I have a moral opposition to voting for someone who has supported genocide." Now, again, it's interesting when we invoke responsibility and when we don't. When is it Kamala's administration? When is it Biden's administration? Who do we hold accountable and who do we hold to task for policy choices? But again, another conversation we can have another time. At the core, people are like, "Wait a minute." In fact, if you look at the video that popped up here, and I want you to just notice not just the video itself, but the person who posted the
The
video.
Democratic National
What they
Convention
did
is coming to
was,
Chicago.
interesting
It's where the
enough,
Democratic Party's insiders and delegates come together.
what they did what they did was someone posted this and said a Chicago-based activist group has put out an ominous video ahead of the Chicago DNC 24. And they sort of put this part. We're going to give her a warm welcome to our city. And they call it Killer Kamala. Of course, when the video keeps saying Kamala, I don't get why people insist on mispronouncing her name. It feels wild. There's a whole country full of people that can say Giannis Antetokounmpo, Michelle Indigeo, um, Mike Krzyzewski which is spelled Kry, etc. And they can't say Kamala. I find that weird. But what's more weird is that they wrote "Attention FBI." Attention FBI. So they're making this a threat. Now, again, the guy had his voice modulated so we wouldn't know who he was. The guy had his face covered so we wouldn't see who he is. And if you threaten and not threatening, but if you're promising to confront and even protest the vice president, the alphabet boy is going to be on your ass. So I can see why you would want to cover your face and modulate your voice. Um, Somebody said he can say Gaza correctly, but cannot say Kamala. Well, I suspect the man is Palestinian, so saying Gaza, sorry, Gaza is probably natural for him. Saying Kamala could not be at that level, but I still think the mispronunciation of her name is intentional, disrespectful, and a whole lot of other things that we could talk about another time. Um, um, but let's keep going. The issue here, of course, is how people are feeling and responding to it. On X, at least my sector of X, at least where I live on Twitter, the comments were not favorable. People were calling it domestic terrorism. Again, they tagged the FBI. People were acting like this is a problem. Um, I want to know what y'all think. What do you think? Share in the comments. Is this domestic terrorism? Is this just a promise to protest? Is the protest reasonable? Is this going too far? How are you all making sense of this? Also, family, don't forget to hit the like button if you're not a subscriber. No time like the present to join the Night School family. It's important, y'all. You can also hit me up on Instagram and follow the show on Instagram. Not the live show, but you can get some clips and some announcements. Make sure you go to Night School MLH to get all of that information right here, y'all. But we got more to talk about. You see, after that video went up, people started talking, especially Black people, voters, influencers, academics. They were not taking that video lightly. They saw someone with their face covered, their voice disguised, talking about giving Kamala Harris a warm welcome in Chicago, and they took it as a threat. You had people like Chris Evans, who's a social media influencer, who shared the video and said, "Oh, they're going to f around and find out." Basically saying, "See what happens if y'all do that." Um, but the one that surprised me even more, that I thought went even further, and I found even more problematic, was the one that came from Malcolm Nance. Y'all know Malcolm Nance. I know Malcolm Nance. He's a Philly guy. Malcolm Nance is on MSNBC. Malcolm Nance is a hardcore military guy in terms of uh, his training, in terms of his commitment to protecting the U.S. government, in terms of his embeddedness in the Middle East. Malcolm Nance is somebody who is a serious person. I think he's been jumping out the window on the issue of Israel Palestine. I think he's too pro-American. I think he advances an imperialist agenda. I know Malcolm. I like Malcolm and personally, just think he's wrong politically. That's my normal position. But today, it felt more than that. Malcolm responded to that video by writing, "Terrorists and Hamas supporters of the Free Palestine groups think they are going to disrupt the DNC, question mark? Well, it will be the largest assembly of African Americans since 2008. That's the Obama moment. And we have a rather peculiar, set of skills." And then he posts the picture of this chair and says, "Do we have a problem here?" Wow. So if you don't know, the chair is a reference to the Alabama brawl where a black guy was attacked by some white folk, and black people came like the Avengers to protect their brother and to punish them white folk, and the chairs came out. And so what they call the fade in the water has become a kind of black pop culture uh, moment that we hold on to. In fact, the anniversary of the fade in the water just happened last week. So when Malcolm Nance is posting the chair and saying, "Do we have a problem here?" This whole tweet is doing a certain kind of political and cultural work. First, he says terrorists and Hamas supporters of the Free Palestine groups. So it's a deft political move to say the terrorists and Hamas supporters of the Free Palestine group. So it's like, oh, I'm not saying you're all terrorists and Hamas supporters. Um, I'm just saying the Free Palestine groups have them in there. That's a lot of interesting and problematic language. First, to suggest that Free Palestine groups are somehow on a routine basis filled with terrorists is just not true. Second, to link Hamas supporters with terrorism is to suggest that anybody who supports a national liberation movement, that anybody who pushes back against the Israeli government, that anybody who acknowledges uh, the legal and moral and just quite frankly natural right to defend oneself with armed struggle, to lump them in with terrorism. That's a very specific choice, so that you can't have any understanding, any analysis, any allegiance, any solidarity with what Hamas is doing. Now, you could disagree with tactically, you could disagree ideologically, even, right? I certainly have some fundamental disagreements with lots of people around the world, but at the core, Malcolm is trying to make it seem like anybody who's at the DNC protesting Kamala Harris, he's setting the table for that kind of conversation, I should say, where anybody who is opposing Kamala Harris, anybody who's challenging Kamala Harris, from the perspective of a pro-Palestine movement, well, they're probably close to the terrorists. They're building with the terrorists. They're building with the Hamas supporters. And again, making it so that you can't even say Hamas out loud. They did the same thing with the PLO. They've been doing the same thing with the PLO for decades. So Malcolm X is doing all of that, but there's another thing that he's doing here that I think is more significant for tonight, and that is basically threatening pro-Palestinian protesters by saying, if you come and threaten or even protest, maybe black folk gonna whoop your ass. That's effectively what he's saying. Malcolm Nance is setting the table for a dangerous, very dangerous confrontation. This is scary. This is dangerous. This is problematic. At the core, we have to be on the same team. At the core, we have to recognize our mutual oppression, and that the forces and the institutions and the framework and the modes of capital that create oppression for you also create oppression for me. And the only way we win is if we organize, work in solidarity to defeat our open and common enemy. That's how this thing works. That's how this thing should work. But the problem is, for the last few months, certainly the last month, once Kamala Harris has become the top of the ticket, even more so, there is a huge and deep tension brewing, or being revealed, probably more honestly, between Black people and Palestinian people. And what Malcolm Nance is saying here is is an example of that. First of all, this idea that Kamala Harris should be off limits for critique is problematic. Again, I plan to vote for Kamala Harris. I think voting for Kamala Harris is the best and the correct choice. I do. That doesn't mean that I don't have critiques of her. That does not mean that I don't recognize how this imperial war machine is working. The question just is, how do we resist it, and how pragmatic are we? How principled are we? How strategic are we? How effective are we? We got to consider all of those things and prioritize all of those things simultaneously. And so when Malcolm Nance says that, and then I look on Twitter and people are co-signing it and saying, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's now this moment where some people are under the belief that Black people don't care about genocide. And I'm getting it too. People tell me I don't care about genocide. I don't care about Palestine. What? But the idea here is that if you are voting for Kamala Harris and you don't care about genocide, or that you're amoral or morally indifferent to what's happening there. And so that's making a lot of Black people look like they don't support Palestinians. And then there are Black folk who are saying, wait a minute, y'all. You're asking us to make a certain kind of political choice that, and as a practical matter, may not even make your condition better, right? Trump versus Harris versus Biden in terms of what's happening in Palestine. But the difference here domestically matters. The Supreme Court matters. Reproductive justice matters. Voting rights matters. So we don't have the luxury here of just being abstract or being single issue voters, even as we try to stand in solidarity. But my Palestinian brothers and sisters are saying, yeah, but we're dying. And you are casting a vote for the people who are either killing us or allowing us to be. That is not sustainable. That is not morally sustainable or defensible. So this is the tension. This is the issue. And So when Malcolm Nance talks about hitting black folk with chairs, at the same time that Malcolm Nance is, or implying that we hit people with chairs, at the same time that he has been so in favor of the Zionist project, so in favor of the Zionist militia, so in favor of the Israeli state, it looks like something else. And this is why I wanted to talk about this tonight, y'all. Do I think a fade in the water part two is going to happen? No, I pray no, and I don't imagine no. I don't imagine that it'll happen. But I do see a deep tension on social media, a deep tension in the political discourse that is putting Black people and Palestinian people at odds. And I want to encourage everybody here who is witnessing this, as I am, to also I want you to consider, first of all, why this is happening. Are there agent provocateurs out there that are making this happen? Do we know who made that video? Do we know who makes other videos? Uh, uh, do we know who is causing the tension and the beef and the splits between us? Do we know the answer to these questions? This is the question. In other words, don't assume that the people causing the beef are people who are for us or with us or even pretend to be. This might be a deliberate strategy. Why do I say that? Well, because for the last 10 years, certainly the last 10 years, we have seen a renewal of the energy of Black Palestinian solidarity. We have Black folks standing up and speaking out in favor of Palestine. We got Black people speaking up since October 7th about how wrong this is. And now suddenly we're at odds. And random people who we don't know are spewing information, spewing disinformation, spewing comments and threats and accusations that are only dividing us further. As oppressed people, we need to organize, align, build, and struggle and resist, in particular, together. But there are moments where our interests don't fully align. There are moments where there are going to be contradictions. There are moments where there are going to be tensions. There are going to be moments where we're going to have to look out for what's best for us, and other people are going to look out what's best for them. We have to accept that as a function of any solidarity project. That has to be it. I'm going to respond to something in a moment, but we have to one. I completely am disgusted. Let me be clear, because I don't want to be unclear about this. I am disgusted by Malcolm Nance's comment. He is creating attention as a prominent Black Democrat who's also a war hawk, as many centrist Democrats are. He's setting the conditions for Palestinians to be seen as threats, for them to be seen as terrorists, for them to be seen as violent. He is also setting the table to encourage Black people to make any critique of Kamala Harris be responded to with hostility and maybe even violence or the threat of violence. This cannot be how we move. So I have no appreciation, no agreement with Malcolm Nance on that point. So let's leave that there. There's some questions and comments coming in. Some of y'all are talking trash about my political choices, and I feel y'all. I hear y'all. We can talk about it on the other side. We're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, I'll answer some of your comments and questions, because y'all are talking crazy in these comments, and I want y'all to know that, one, I ain't running, I ain't ducking no smoke, and number two, there's a good answer for what I have said and what I believe. So let's talk about it. See you on the other side. Peace. Welcome back to Night School. It's your brother Marc Lamont Hill. We've been talking about the tensions that have emerged among Palestinians and Black folk. We're going to talk more about that in a minute, but I want to um, address some of the things that are coming up in the comment sections because they're fascinating to me. By the way, before I get to those, I just want to shout out some people here. Uh, and thank you so much for the super sticker. I really appreciate it. Uh, this person said paid players are in demand. Um, Paid stands for players are in demand. Are you voting for Kamala Harris? Not Dr. Snyder. As of now, yes, and I'll tell you why. If Biden died, Kamala will be our president. Now, that's exactly right, Chef. That was in response to the person who said we didn't get to vote. There's a case to be made about when you vote for a ticket, you're voting for the president and the vice president. I would argue, though, that, and I think that's true at a certain level, but I think it's also true that if a person um, we you may not want that to be your first choice at the top of a ticket in a primary where anybody can vote. It's one thing to say, "Hey, I voted for this ticket, we won," and I accept that. That's the order of succession. That's different than saying, "Hey, I want this person." I think had there been an open primary, I do believe that Kamala Harris still would have won, and I think that I don't see. I still think she, as a practical matter, would have been formidable because the other strong candidates, if they would have alienated Black voters and particularly Black women voters. I just don't know if they could have won. So in this context, I'm not sure it would have mattered. But I agree with the premise that there should have been an open primary. But I do believe again that Kamala Harris would have won that primary. Um, Players are in demand. Said Mark has no integrity. One day he is green, next he's vote blue. Pick a side, Lamont, you big dummy. So I'm reading it because you gave a super chat, and again, my rule is if you send a super chat, I'm going to read it. But let's be clear. By the way, my name is spelled with a K, a C, not a K. Um, and also, Lamont, you big dummy, is every person thinks they're the first person to link my name to Lamont from Sanford and Son. It's never funny. I'm not offended or hurt or salty. It's just not that great a joke. And the fact that everybody says it, like you, should tell you something. Anyway, one day he's green. No, not one day I'm green. I've been a Green Party member for more than 20 years. I continue to be a Green Party member. I support the Green Party. I organize with the Green Party. I build with the Green Party. I vote for the Green Party. You're allowed to, in a particular election, make a different choice. And I've decided to make I'm permitted to make that choice. The other thing here is I'm not advocating. I'm not out here telling everybody you better vote for blue. I didn't say that. I'm telling you what my personal choice is, and I'm telling you why. But I've also said, and I'll continue to say, that I respect people who are making the third party choice. I understand why people are making the third um, um, I understand why people make the third party choice. I respect it, I understand it, and I will continue to respect and understand it. I just happen to believe over the last 8 years that the approach we've taken has been undermined by our actions on the ground. And I don't think that we have, when I say we, I mean the Green Party, that we have earned the vote. It's funny how y'all say y'all just give the Democrats your vote. You people on the Democratic plantation, you just give away your votes. Democrats, no matter what, blue, no matter who. But you're basically telling me that I have to be green no matter who, right? That if I'm not happy with how the Green Party is treating me or how the Green Party is moving, that I still must keep voting for them no matter what. That feels weird. That's a weird to me. I don't know how you could square that circle. To me, I'm going to vote for the person who I think will allow me to struggle and allow the people to achieve the best outcome for the most people. And so anything I do is strategic. It's also ethical and moral. Richard Deb says, as an Arab who was born and raised in the Middle East, I've become a one issue voter. I'm not voting for genocide. I get it. You would never see me tell a Palestinian or a Lebanese or a Syrian or an Iraqi or a Sudani or whatever, or Yemeni, that you vote for genocide no matter what's happening in your home back at home. I think it's an unreasonable ask. I still think that strategically it's the right choice, what I'd be asking, but I understand people who just can't pull the lever for their people to be genocided. I get it. So this narrative that I'm like, stumping for the Democrats or telling people um, that they got to vote that way, um, it's just not true. Adrian says, I think unfortunately, no matter who wins, the genocide will continue. I think that might be true, which for me is why, other than the performative value of it, I'm not sure why it would make sense for me to vote in a way that also loses the Supreme Court, that loses the House and Senate, that creates more danger and drama and fear and marginalization and oppression and death. Under Trump, hundreds of thousands of people died that didn't have to. When you talk about premature death, Trump created a situation under COVID. He didn't create COVID, but he moved in a way that led to COVID getting worse, that expanded COVID, and that didn't create the proper protections. People died because Trump was president who didn't have to. There are people who died under Trump who would have been alive under just about anybody else. For that reason alone, I don't want Trump around. I want to live to fight another day. That's why I do that. There's no secret agenda here. Again, you may disagree with me. You may genuinely believe that the best approach is a different approach. You may genuinely believe that the best way to fight this fascist moment is to starve the major parties and vote third party only, or to not vote. I understand that logic. Again, I ain't mad at you. I just don't think that that's the most effective strategy. I think that people say, you know, that this is a strategy that's going to go on, and we keep kicking the ball down the road, and we'll just keep voting for Democrats because we keep saying, "Fuck it," like we got to vote for somebody, and we don't want the greater of two evils. I agree with that, and that's the argument I've always made. I do think that Trump right now represents something different. I also don't think that the third party wave has actually done enough at the national level or at the grassroots level to warrant being at the national level. So again, I agree with the work and the strategy of the Working Families Party, which is to say, we're going to build grassroots. We're going to vote locally for our party's candidates. We're going to make sure that our party's candidates are in positions to be successful. You know, we're going to tear these primaries up. We're going to work at the state level. We're going to build these things up. We're going to continue to build a movement that is well recognized, that is deeply embedded in the policy world, and we're going to win. And then over time, maybe 10 years from now, we'll have a national candidate. We'll have somebody to go up against whoever, you know, the person is then. But right now, there's an urgency to the moment that we can't ignore. I think that that's not an unreasonable position to take. Baby K said, how can we get rid of the electoral college so we can have popular vote and get rid of these clown parties? Yo, popular vote, getting rid of the electoral college wouldn't stop the clown parties, and it wouldn't stop corporate spending from being the primary influencer. It wouldn't stop all these billions that are bankrolled into it. The electoral college wouldn't do those things. I mean, there's a way that getting rid of the electoral college would actually just have all the candidates focus on the big states and just getting the most votes from the most people, right? Like we're just going to worry about going to California and Texas to start because those are just so huge, and we can do the Illinois and Pennsylvanians and Floridas, and not in that order, but we can do all the other ones too. But I'm not stopping in Montana. You know how many people live in Montana? Just doesn't make sense. So that would be the logic, unfortunately. So you want to make sure that all the people feel represented, even the vulnerable minority, not just the vulnerable majority. That would be my only reservation about it. But in general, I'm with you. This is the fear that I have. Kofi's message right here. If protesters won't stand in black with black and brown people, then why should black and brown people stand support Palestine? Well, I mean, Palestinians are brown people, but I get your point, brother. I get your point. It's well taken. 77 figures said Mark Mass forward with the hotels. Oh, thank you. I just saw Uncle Hotep on Twitter a few minutes ago admitting the defeat, acknowledging the defeat. So I was like, okay, at least he knows. At least he knows. I'm not an agent. I'm not here to undermine the people. Um, I'm making the decision for me that I think is the decision that is the best. But I'm not taking a moral high ground or some intellectual high ground with people who vote third party. Now, if you vote for Trump, I think you're crazy. That's what I'm trying to challenge people who think Trump is it. After that, who you actually vote for, we'll figure that out. But let's stop Trump. That's my position. We got a couple more coming in. Perp, thank you so much. I appreciate the love. I appreciate the donation. Thank you so much. All right, family. On to the next one. I'm making an adjustment because I saw something I didn't like. So we do it in real time because that's what live is about. All right, y'all. So here's a story that I've been trying to figure out how to talk about, how to figure out what to do with. Um, and I just want to get right to it. Civil rights attorney and author Nora Etiquette is eyeing the White House. It's worth noting Nora is also a full professor at Rutgers University. She is an intellectual giant. Uh, Anyway, Nora Etiquette is eyeing the White House, so to speak, as she's considering running on the Green Party ticket in the vice presidential slot alongside Jill Stein. Nora posted a thread on X, formerly known as Twitter, that's getting a lot of attention that I think is worth examining. So let's examine it, y'all. Nora goes on Twitter and says Jill Stein's team approached me to run as her vice presidential running mate or vice presidential candidate, and I am seriously considering it. The Harris team demanding our votes to quote save our democracy, but has been oblivious to the fact that supporting a genocide poses the most significant threat to it. The United States is sending weapons to Israel in violation of U.S. law, including the Leahy Amendment in Section 6201 of the Foreign Assistance Act on the delivery of humanitarian aid, to say nothing of international law, including recent ICJ decisions and the ICC request for arrest warrants. More, polls have consistently shown disapproval of Biden's handling of the war, and most recently, a Gallup poll showed that 55% of all Americans disapprove of Israel's military action. Meanwhile, protesters demanding ceasefire and an arms embargo have been attacked, brutalized, doxxed, and punished. Saving our democracy means a U.S. arms embargo and support for a permanent ceasefire. When Vice President Harris told anti-war protesters in Michigan, "I am speaking," it reminded me of the millions of people around the world who have been speaking out against American complicity in the bombing of Palestinians, primarily children. She's on fire. Palestinians can't eat words or sympathy. We need real commitments to change, commitments that speak to voters in swing states like Michigan and Georgia to show that VP Harris will finally ensure, at bare minimum, its weapons are used in compliance with U.S. law. That's a lie, yo. So I have a lot to say or a lot of thoughts about this, and I hope that Nora will come on. She's supposed to come on the show anyway a few weeks ago, We talked about her coming on, so I'm hoping that now she'll definitely be able to come on and talk through this with us. Nora, of course, is a colleague of mine, a dear friend of mine, my sister, my friend, my homegirl, my buddy. So I want to lay that on the table, as you all may accuse me of having some bias. Um, but I thought that this was interesting for multiple reasons. One, I've never, I wasn't familiar with people. Um, how can I put it? Sort of announcing that they're considering a run for VP. Usually they accept it or they don't accept it. And if you don't accept it, you don't say anything about it. In 2016, I was offered the vice presidential slot on a Jill Stein ticket in the summer of 2016. I decided not to for several reasons, but I didn't say anything at the time. I've only mentioned it once or twice afterward. I mean, years afterward. I'm not saying that to critique Nora. I'm just saying to say this is an unorthodox choice. I'm curious to know why Nora doesn't do anything by accident, or I won't say anything, but she's very thoughtful and very strategic, and one of the most principled people I've ever met. So I'm sure the reason why she's leaking that, so to speak, not leaking it, but sort of teasing us with that, is for a reason, and I don't know what the reason is, but I'm interested to know what the reason is. But she's also offering the kind of principled critique of Kamala Harris that we just talked about a moment ago, in saying that, look, it's not enough to just be a woman. It's not enough to just be black. It's not enough to just say you want peace. You have to actually earn our votes. And when Kamala Harris stepped up in Michigan and responded to protesters by saying, I am speaking, and if you want George Bush, just say that. It did frustrate and alienate some sectors of her potential voting base. And when I said that, y'all said, oh, it doesn't matter. No one's tripping. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. But as you see, it's energized her opposition. It's frustratingly energized people who were sitting home for Biden and were now going to stand back up, or at least who were open to it, who could be persuaded, who were in the zone where they could be talked to and engaged and persuaded to make whatever choices they think they should make. So it's it was just such an un what do you call it? What do you call it? It's an error, but it's like an unforced error. It's an unforced error by the Harris campaign. Uh, and they gave no signal, both in policy or in performance, that they are willing to stop the genocide in Gaza. They want us wanting a ceasefire is one thing, and it's also important to say, well, what does it mean to want a ceasefire? Are we talking about a permanent ceasefire? Are we talking about what ultimately is just a long humanitarian pause? Like, what does it mean? Because the humanitarian pause, at one point, was being presented as 48 hours, 72 hours. So if they say, "Oh, we had a ceasefire, it was 72 hours," it's like, no, that ain't what we talked about. So we don't know enough to know where the Harris administration is on this issue. And over time, we will certainly find out, and I can't wait to find out. Um, but Nora is saying, look, this response to us, or this response to protesters, particularly Arab and Muslim protesters, was wholly unacceptable, but reflective of a deeper sensibility. This isn't a gotcha because you made one mistake. This isn't a, hey, you did something I didn't like, so I'm never going to rock with you again. It's saying that, hey, there are fears about this kind of thing, and the fears have been confirmed by the circumstances. That's something else. Um, no, that kind of broke the whole thing down, right? She's saying this. We have to question what it means to save our democracy if we're violating all the laws to do so. We gotta interrogate that. That's why we need Norda to come for office hours to break this down for us, like only an Usteza can do. But what does it mean if Norda Etiquette runs on the Green Party ticket? This is not a small thing. Norda is adored by lots of people, but particularly by the Palestinian people. And in the United States, among Palestinian Americans, she is a legend. So if Norda Etiquette decides to run on that ticket, and I think Jill Stein knows this, that could change the balance of power in Michigan. That could change the balance of power in Pennsylvania. Because if there's a slice of people that say, yeah, I just can't pull that lever for genocide, and Norda's right over there with Jill, and they're anti-war, and it's pro-peace, like let's make it happen. And that's the calculation that they're going to have in their minds. So Norda eyeing the Green Party could be a leverage move, hoping that Democrats be like, yo, we got to do something, because if Norda and Jill Stein are going to shave some points, it's like, oh, UNLV basketball team. So we got to think about that. But there's also the ethical and principle question of, is it right to remain silent in a moment of genocide? Is it right to vote for the lesser of two evils when the evil is so extraordinary? How do you make sense of this? These are the questions that we're going to have to think through. Norda Etiquette could absolutely turn Michigan. I know it sounds crazy to think about, one person affecting a state, but again, Pennsylvania was only lost by 10, 20, 30,000 votes, right? When Trump won. There's no reason to believe that Norda couldn't convince enough people to vote that direction that then gives Trump Pennsylvania or Michigan. Now, I'm not blaming Norda or Palestinians or protesters for Trump potentially winning again. Ultimately, the burden and the blame is on the Democratic Party for not offering a candidate that voters want to vote for. I mean, ultimately, people do have free will. I just think that at this juncture in history, we have to ask ourselves, what is the consequence of this move versus that move? And again, Norda is principled and brilliant, and I'm not worried that she's doing something hasty or dumb or unprincipled. I just want to know sort of collectively how we're going to think and strategize about this kind of stuff. Because, man, it's hard out here. So I wish Norda luck in whatever choice she makes. I'm excited to talk to her about it. I hope that she talks about it. Um, yeah, what a day, what a moment, y'all. What a moment. And I think the most frustrating thing is that so much of the conversation is about how people are talking about Israel, and very little is actually about Israel. Very little is about what's actually happening. So, I just want to say, while we're talking about, Zionist candidates and all this stuff, there are real leaders in Israel who are prosecuting a war against those same vulnerable Palestinian people. So I just had to lay that out there and make that clear. Israel is destroying so much right now. So much right now. And it's sort of devastating to see. An investigation by Al Jazeera's Sanad verification agency finds that Israel's Saturday morning strike at Al Taban school was timed to kill, was it's designed to kill or intended to kill as many displaced people as possible. 100 people were killed. That included women and children, by the way. According to Al Jazeera, the evidence shows that Israel fired two guided missiles in the attack to coincide with Fajr, Salat al-Fajr, or dawn prayers. The bombs tore through the ceilings of the attached mosque. I'm always upset when churches, synagogues, mosques get hit. The bombs tore through the ceilings of the attached mosque, passed through the women's chapel on the first floor, and exploded on the ground floor where the men's chapel was located. The investigation found that fragments from at least two shells were American made. They are the type of shells made and exported by Boeing to the Israeli army. So we are seeing again a moment of extraordinary violence and devastation and destruction. And the idea that this is a morally just war, the most moral army in the world prosecuting the war, nah, all of it is absurd. But it's even more absurd when you look at the physical damage of what has happened, what will be happening, what will continue to happen. in the region. It is, I mean, literally devastating. 100 people killed, including women and children. Israel must be held accountable. Um, Speaking of being held accountable, or maybe not being held accountable, we got to talk a little bit about the Donald. The Donald said something else that was wild, and I want to get y'all takes on it. So we will talk about it on the other side of this break. In the meantime, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the join button, and if you want to drop another, oh, yeah, I see some comments here. We'll get to them on the other side of this break. But shout out to everybody who's doing that, because we're grateful for the donations, we're grateful for the help, we're grateful for the support, and most importantly, we're grateful for the love. Hang here for 30 seconds. I'll be back, and we will talk about this crazy man. All right, family, welcome back to Night School. We still talking, we still chatting, we still building here. Wanted to make sure that everybody had an opportunity also to weigh in on this conversation, because we've been talking a lot about uh, the political tensions between Israel and Palestine, the political tensions between Palestinians and Black Americans, and also what the strategic and moral, the tactical, all of it, what should we be doing? Think about that as we answer these questions. I'm trying to always think through that as well. Comments coming in. Do you think the Dems believe they can win the presidency, or just making sure they don't lose Congress? Look, Nancy Pelosi's argument, and the argument of Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries was, look, you're losing so bad, Joe Biden. We're not fundraising, and we're going to lose the whole Congress. So Kamala Harris, for many people, was just was a stopgap, because she brought so much energy and love to the campaign that she absolutely was a step up, and that she absolutely could win it all. But worst case is we just save the Congress. Now I think people are like, let's go for broke. Same thing with, like, when Trump ran, almost 8 years ago. It's like, can he do it? Will he embarrass? Oh wait, no, he could win. Oh wait, no, he is win. Oh wait, he's kicking everybody's ass. Trump is starting to have that figure four leg lock reversed a little bit. He's starting to see what happens when there's a new upstart, not upstart, when there's a new energy in your opponent's campaign, and you see what you can do with it. So yes, they believe they can win, and they're right. Democrats can absolutely win Congress right now. I can tell you that for a fact. Who was that guy who hosted the debate with Hotep? He was very ignorant. That's Uncle. So I debated Uncle Hotep, and this guy was Hotep Jesus. They all have Hotep in the name. I don't quite understand it, but I was just grateful to be able to, to build, man. So that's all I got to say. I think we're missing the point. Our support for genocide will lead us to World War III. This will really kill our democracy. We need to be real about it. It could, or it could not. I mean, we've had other sort of global conflicts that didn't turn out. They didn't kill our democracy, and even anyway, we could go on and on about proxy wars and such, but I actually don't think that's necessarily the case. We should support the end of genocide, because we should support the end of genocide. It's a moral commitment I have there. I don't ever want to see a genocide. But I also have a commitment to doing the right thing at all times. In other words, and this is the important point that you're making, I think, Samba. If we continue to do what we're doing in the United States, we're going to create a regional war. What the United States is doing with Hezbollah, what they're doing with the Houthis, what they're doing with Hamas, whether it's the Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, all of it, we're creating more enemies, fewer friends, and we're stoking regional conflict everywhere. What Israel's doing in northern Israel, southern Lebanon, what's happening in Syria, what's happening in the Red Sea, what's happening in all these places is deeply dangerous. And so the imperial agenda is actually leading to more war and it's going to kill more people. So, but we have to figure out again, it's threading a needle, right? It's not, I don't think it misses the point to say, hey, I care about all that, but the ballot box isn't the place to stop it anyway. So why are we, anyway, I think that that's the tension. That's the argument. That's the challenge that people are having. Uh, do you think that Dems believe they can win the presidency or just making sure? Right. So that was, that's the answer. They absolutely think they can win, Jay, as we said. Rosability said, would you bring Amanda and or Ole back to talk about this? Both have great takes, and I think the conversation will be educational. The left needs to get so much better attention than coalition, but either, although they're both my fam. I'm very close to both of them, so um, we can make that happen. Let's try and do it for this week or next week. Just looking at the comments you guys are sending. Cat and the Greens need to think about who's likely to be worse for the Palestinians in the long run. What's happening is abhorrent, but there will be an end. W. Trump, there will never be an end. I get that argument. You suffer a little bit more now, but you have a greater, more sort of expansive freedom dream later, or realization of the freedom dream later. That might be true. I think people have to make that choice. I get people who say, I'm going to be pragmatic and vote for the person who's likely to win anyway. I also understand the logic of saying, I'm voting third, I'm voting Green, I'm voting Cornell, I'm voting Claudia, I'm voting Jill, or however you think about this. There are people who say, look, I know that this person can't win, but we're sending a message to Democrats that will pull them back to the left if they want our votes later on. It's just a question of whether there's a critical mass of people who can help me make that happen. So again, I don't. I understand your point, Christine, which is, hey, Trump killed Palestinian life, so like maybe just blocking him, maybe letting Kamala win just to block him is good enough reason as a practical matter. But who knows? What do I know? I appreciate you create the environment for conversation. I wrestle with this daily. Many people can be harmed by voting my values against genocide. How do we make our vote most impactful? Not a simple answer. That's a whole show, but I promise you I'll give you that answer the next time we come on, but in full, Lee. But let me give you just a few thoughts on it. You said more people can be harmed by voting my values against genocide. I agree, right? How do we make our vote most impactful? Not a simple answer. I mean, part of it, you have to reconceptualize how you think about voting, not think about voting as a individual choice that reflects our values and character and personality, etc. But to think about it as a part of a democracy, and to think about it as part of a collective ideology that says, we're at our best, we're at our strongest when the largest number of people among us is doing well, right? When the most vulnerable among us are treated well and protected and safe, right? And so if we're thinking about all of us, then I think it's hard to say, yeah, just let Trump win, or let's just vote in a way that leads to it's it's complicated. That's all I can say. It's all complicated. Um, and I get the wrestling. Every time I see a bomb go off in Gaza, every time I do the Gaza report, I'm like, oh my God, I can't vote for somebody who does this. But I don't know. I struggle. I struggle with it. But I also know that not making those choices doesn't lead us to a better outcome. And that's what's scary to me. That's what's scary to me. Um, all right. We should probably get going, but I want to read one more uh story to you if you don't mind. Um Sometimes, I don't even understand what be happening, man. But I'll say this: Donald Trump is a crazy person, and I mean that with no disrespect to people who struggle with mental illness. Donald Trump is bonkers. Whatever some of y'all thought, it just he gets crazier. That's all I can tell you. He gets crazier. So, um, let's get to it. I'm pulling up something that I need y'all to see, and then you'll understand why. Because this man is a psychopath. Um, First of all, Donald Trump last night sat down with Elon Musk, and it was a disaster. I mean, technically, it was a fail. It was a botched rollout, whether it's JD Vance, whether it's Ron DeSantis a while back. You know, it was just a big fail. Uh, both the kind of all of it. That's all I can say. First of all, did you notice Donald Trump was slurring a lot? And if you don't know what I'm talking about, Donald Trump and Elon Musk sat down on the X platform, and Elon interviewed him, and it was a nightmare. And Trump was slurring. I don't know if that's because he had his fix or because he hasn't had his fix of whatever. Might be just coffee. Uh, Not much news came from the 2 hour bromance, but Trump did catch the attention of media pundits after commenting on Vice President Kamala Harris's Time cover magazine. I don't know if y'all saw this magazine, but it's pretty fire, yo. If you're gonna be in a magazine or on a magazine, I think this might be the one. You know what I'm saying? Time magazine. It's like some woman of the year type thing. It's like a statesman. But they posted that. And people just lose their minds about these things. Donald Trump starts commenting on the cover. Now, he had to point out that he'd been on the cover before and all that, but fundamentally, he wants to be on every cover all the time. He is Kim Jong-un. But uh, the pundits responded, and Trump responded. And what Trump said it was her face. Uh, it has the cover. It has her face with drawings of voters holding their signs, simply with the text "her moment" in the upper right corner. And there is something about that I don't love. The whole idea of the heir apparent, like it's her moment. Well, we'll see. But again, I'm voting for. I'm supporting her. But I just strategically, I don't understand some of the moves. Um, it was her face with drawings of voters holding her sign, simply with the text "her moment" in the bottom right corner. So you could see that. Well, Trump felt away. I mean, we know Trump felt away. Trump feels away about everything, but Donald Trump decided to speak out about that magazine cover and what it meant, and also what the hell it had to do with his. He brings up Melania, is all I'm saying. You know what? Just watch it. I want y'all to just watch it because I don't want y'all to think that I'm being hype or extra or that I'm overstating it. So you just listen and watch for yourselves.
She is terrible. She's terrible. But she's getting a free ride. I saw a picture of her on Time magazine today. She looks like the most beautiful actress ever to live. It was a drawing. And actually, she looked very much like our great first lady, Melania. She didn't look, she didn't look like Camilla. That's right. But of course, she's a beautiful woman. So we'll leave it at that, right?
Okay, that's another pronunciation of her name, Camilla.
It's courtesy of CNN, and shout out to Mediaite for running the story about CNN's reaction to it. So Donald Trump says that this is wild. Donald Trump says that Kamala Harris looks like Melania. Wow. First of all, do y'all see that in the comments? Say, does Trump's wife, Melania, look like Vice President Kamala Harris? Either in actual facial features or in some kind of like, it's an air, it's a vibe kind of way. To me, neither is the case. I'm not going to disrespect Melania Trump, but I will say there's nothing about her that's like Kamala Harris, in my opinion. And also the blatant, again, disrespecting of her name. Now it's Camilla. Come on, man. If this is a strategy designed to get people off their square, don't fall for it. Donald Trump is a child, emotionally, intellectually, etc. He hates that her crowds are bigger, so he spreads a conspiracy theory that there's nobody at the airports for her, and she's making it up, and it's AI. She gets a time cover. He feels weird about it, so he has to talk about it and say, "You're just ripping off Melania's swag." Like what? America don't give a damn about Melania Trump, and that's again no disrespect to her. It's just Trump's life, Trump's presence looms so large, and he doesn't want to make anybody else share the spotlight with him or have any access to the spotlight. So it's not surprising. But I say that to say I don't know exactly what the Melania Kamala connection is in terms of appearance, but or vibes or whatever. But I will say that it doesn't make a lot of sense. Just like that Elon Musk interview didn't make a lot of sense. It's just a bunch of posturing and talking and yapping. Anyway, we'll talk about all of it later. I gotta run, but I want to thank you all for watching Night School tonight. As you can see, I'm on my I'm running on fumes right now. I'm exhausted. I'm so drained, but I had to come here and talk about this stuff with you all because I love y'all and I appreciate y'all. The comment wells are lit up. We got a couple more actually super chats that I am going to take because, as I said, I promised to do that. We got Jazz LP, Dallas's finest, who said, "Mark, did you hear that Donald T told his nephew to quote just let his son die because he didn't recognize him?" I did not hear that per se, but I know that Trump has a long history and record of being cruel and mean, or callous, or morally indifferent, or just like shut down. So no, it doesn't. I didn't hear it, but it don't shock me one iota. Silas Whittle said, "Why is Kerr such a terrible coach? Seriously, how does this genocide in Gaza continue to be ignored by the UN?" Well, that is a strict. I can't link them to. I don't know how you did, brother, but I'll tell you this: one, I don't think Steve Kerr is a terrible coach. I think that he might be an overrated coach. The same way that Phil Jackson to me was an overrated coach. If you want to talk to me about greatness, I want to see how you respond with a bad team, not what do you do with the two greatest shooters of all time. What do you do with one of the best utility men in all of basketball history? What do you do when KD's? There's a way that Kerr has never been battle tested. And honestly, I think he can coach, and I think his coaching staff demonstrates that as well. I think that's a misreading of the situation. I don't think he's a terrible coach, but I just don't think he's as good as other people do. You said, seriously, how does the genocide in Gaza continue to be ignored by the UN? The UN is not ignoring the Gazan genocide. The UN is, remember, the ICJ, the court, the International Court, is it's a UN thing. The United Nations Relief Works Agency is desperately fighting to stay present in Gaza so that it can continue to give life-saving aid to folks. So I think the UN is not ignoring it at all. I think the US is ignoring it, but the UN not so much. So everybody watching right now were to drop $10 on the Cash App, the PayPal, the Venmo, or the Zelle, we'd be able to meet our financial goals for the month. We'd be able to pay our vendors. We'd be able to pay the staff. We'd be able to pay for editing, and we'd be able to get the best possible product out for you, as we always do. But we need your support. There is no billionaire money behind me. There is no corporate support for me. I'm doing this on the muscle with my money, but also with the grassroots commitments of the people. So please consider dropping something in. Again, $10 would be the ideal amount if on the Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle. If you can only do $1, that's okay too. Anything is good. We just love you and appreciate you and want to keep doing great stuff for you. So even if you can't drop a nickel in, even if you don't have any money to give, please understand that that's not the core of who we are. I want you to like the videos. That matters to me. I want you to share the videos. That's helpful to me. I want you to love the videos. That's dope. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and also share the content, y'all. Don't be hoarding all the knowledge and the breakdown. Share that stuff. And most importantly, study that stuff. Learn, build, grow intellectually. Because that's what night school is all about. Anyway, family, I want to thank you for watching. I appreciate you. And I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.